Let's get you the headlines. The US announces another $1 billion in military aid for Kyiv and urges allies to provide more weapons to help Ukraine battle Russian forces. Germany has accused the Russian state-controlled gas giant Gazprom of attempting to push up energy prices further by sharply reducing supplies. Gazprom says it's limiting the daily amount of gas it sends through the Nord Stream pipeline by more than half.
The leaders of France, Germany and Italy will visit Ukraine today to meet with President Zelensky. In a show of support, French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi are expected to arrive this morning on the overnight train into Kyiv. It's the leaders' first visit since Russia invaded Ukraine in February. Comes amid a push for the country to become a member of the European Union.
It's 7 in the morning in Singapore and 1 in the morning in Brussels, where the US Defense Secretary has said he will move, quote, heaven and earth to ensure Ukraine receives the weapons it needs to combat Russia's invasion. Lloyd Austin was speaking at a NATO meeting and called on allied countries to urgently increase deliveries of arms during a pivotal moment in the war. Here's a glimpse of what Secretary Austin had to say.
We can't afford to let up, and we can't lose steam. The stakes are too high. Ukraine is facing a pivotal moment on the battlefield, and we're seeing what President Zelensky warned us about. After failing to take Kyiv and reassuring its combat aims, or reassessing its combat aims, Russia has shifted its focus to the Donbass. And we can't underestimate the challenge that Ukraine faces.
A little earlier, President Biden announced that the United States will give an extra $1 billion in security assistance to help Ukraine fight the Russian invasion. Our defense correspondent Jonathan Beale has been given rare access to the US military base in Germany, where they are coordinating supplies of military aid.
Western weapons have been arriving in Ukraine and are being used to deadly effect. More recently, they've been sending more heavy equipment, artillery guns like this, but Ukraine says it's still not enough. And they're vastly outgunned by Russia. But from this US military base in Stuttgart, Germany, Western nations are working hard to keep the weapons flowing. And the US commander of this highly sensitive operation insists Ukraine is getting what it needs.
We are giving the Ukrainians what they need. We're coordinating with them daily. We have a liaison officer here that's a 3-star general that sets their priorities, shares it with us and our allies in our daily coordination sessions, and we're able to adjust very rapidly in the donations that are provided across the allies.
So you don't think Ukraine's going to run out of weapons and ammunition?
We're going to make sure they don't run out of weapons and ammunition.
From this austere building, they're working round the clock to prevent Russia from winning this war. The attic of this barracks behind me has now become the nerve center, the hub for coordinating Western weapon supplies to Ukraine. We've been told we can't film inside for security reasons, but inside there are military personnel from 26 countries trying to ensure Ukraine gets the ammunition and the weapons it needs. This has become a lifeline for Ukraine. These are the first photos from inside, cleared by the US military. So far, dozens of soldiers from dozens of countries have already helped deliver 66,000 tons of military equipment to Ukraine, worth nearly $8 billion. And they believe it's just the start. Here, they're preparing for a very long war.
It's not going to be months.
Well, how long is it going to be?
Yeah, I think we'll be here for a number of years.
They're already preparing to send in American and British multiple rocket launchers. They say once they arrive at secret locations in Eastern Europe, weapons can get to the front line within 48 hours. Ukraine still says it's not enough, but the message from Stuttgart is that it's keeping them in the fight. Jonathan Beale, BBC News, Patch Barracks, Stuttgart.
We also spoke to retired Colonel Brendan P. Kearney, who is now a military affairs analyst after spending 31 years in the U.S. Marines. He told us how important it was for Ukrainians to receive help from NATO.
The Ukrainians have been forthright and public in asking for help. The U.S. and its European friends and allies, NATO, have been providing help here now since the start of these hostilities. The question is, can we get enough of it, this additional help, and some of the help that's just hasn't been delivered yet that was promised months ago, get it in the hands of the Ukrainian soldiers so they can defend their homeland.
Colonel Kearney, do you feel that the U.S. and other countries are still falling short and they need to do much more than what they're doing right now?
You know, that's a great question. And, you know, my knowledge base is that of what is publicly being shared. And I believe we're getting an awful lot of the material that the Ukrainians have requested across the border into Ukraine. And then, of course, it becomes a Ukrainian logistics problem to get it to their frontline forces. However, I have to be honest, I'm a little bit skeptical that what we're doing is providing the Ukrainians enough of these items to go ahead and adequately defend themselves. And quite honestly, as a military man, I think we have to eventually come to the conclusion that if we want these hostilities to end, we have to provide them enough equipment and ammunition so that they can win, they can achieve victory. And if we do that, the hostilities stop.
At this moment, seeing the kind of support that's been extended, do you see Ukraine being able to achieve that?
I see Ukraine being able to adequately defend itself. But, you know, we essentially have in the Donbass region, we essentially have World War I attrition warfare going on. It's, the veterans of World War I would probably feel very comfortable in the trenches of the Donbass. But we have to go ahead and look to somebody winning. And of course, none of us want to see the Russians win. And I think Ukraine can prevent that. So if that's the case, we have to go ahead and look to aiding the Ukrainians to the extent that they can win. They can eject the Russian forces, the invaders, from Ukraine. And then I think once that occurs, and that is not going to be easy. It's going to be months, if not out to a year plus, for them to achieve this. But that's what we should be supporting them in their efforts for.
The sister of one of 3 men sentenced to death by a Russian proxy court in eastern Ukraine has told the BBC she feels his story is being ignored.
Moroccan-born Brahim Saoudin was captured along with 2 British men, Aidan Aslin and Sean Pinner, whilst fighting in the Ukrainian army.
Let's speak to our correspondent Joe Inwood, who joins us now from Kyiv. Very good morning to you, Joe. Just tell us a little more about what Brahim's sister said.
Well, she was talking about the plight of her brother, about what he was like as a man. She was showing us photos of Brahim, and it's interesting when you see them as a young man, when he was joining the army, he really does just look like a child. She was really devastated about what's happened to him, but devastated too about the attention that has focused on the other men, the 2 British men, Aidan Aslin and Sean Pinner, and she feels her brother has somewhat been forgotten. This is what she told me.
He was left in a side a little bit. Maybe it's because of my government. They're not doing much about it. They're literally silent. And nobody's claiming him. I just want to tell him that he is loved. Yes, your government let you down. Your own people let you down, but others didn't. And they are trying their best for you.
Now, but the issue here is not just the support he can get and the publicity he can get, but what really can be done. And in many ways, the issues facing Brahim Saoudin are the same as those facing all of the other men. They're being held in a court, in an unrecognised court, in a state with which their governments have no relations. So although his sister is trying to speak out, is trying to get more attention for his case, in many ways the fundamental issue remains of what can be done to get him out of there.